Welcome back to the deep dive. We are doing something a little different today.
A lot different, I'd say.
Yeah, usually we're looking at history or maybe some new tech, a scientific breakthrough. But today we are looking at a collision, a really violent, messy, and frankly, a terrifying collision.
It's a collision between, the Industrial Revolution and the spiritual realm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We are unpacking a story where faith, it isn't just a feeling, it's a fuel source.
And that's such a strange intersection to think about. We're so used to thinking of science and religion as these, opposing forces. You've got the cold, hard logic of gears and steam on one side, and then the ethereal, totally unquantifiable nature of the soul on the other. But the material we're digging into today asks a really unsettling question.
Which is?
What if you could build an engine that runs on ghosts?
And that is a terrifying question. The source material we're swimming through today is The God Machine, a novel by Thomas E. Sniegoski. Now, for context, this does take place in the Hellboy universe.
Yeah.
So we are dealing with a BPRD, the Bureau for Paranormal Research and Defense. But you really don't need to be a comic book scholar to get gripped by this.
Not at all. At its heart, this is a story about one man, a man named Absalom Spears.
And his obsession with what he calls the creator's mistakes.
And that's a heavy concept to just drop on you right at the start. Absalom isn't your typical villain who just wants money or, political power.
No, it's bigger than that for him.
It's so much bigger. He believes the world is fundamentally broken. He believes humanity is a mistake, and he genuinely intends to fix it.
But not through prayer, and definitely not through politics.
No, through engineering.
That's the hook for me right there.
Yeah.
He tries to bridge that gap between the living and the dead using actual machines. He's like a steampunk necromancer.
That's a perfect way to put it.
We're going to be talking about Victorian spiritualism. We're going to get into a group called the Band of Electricizers.
Which is just a fantastic name.
It's an amazing name, isn't it? And we are going to talk about the end of the world coming in the form of a giant clockwork god.
The scope is just massive. It starts on the cobblestone streets of Lynn, Massachusetts, back in 1891, and it stretches all the way to a modern-day apocalypse scenario.
Right.
But the core mechanic, and I think this is what we really need to dissect here, is this idea of faith energy.
The idea that belief is a tangible, harvestable resource.
Like psychic crude oil.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So our mission today is to track this whole timeline. We need to figure out how a grieving little boy in the 19th century becomes a credible threat to all of modern civilization. And we need to understand the entity he's trying to summon, a god, quote-unquote, named Kemuel.
Kemuel is the real driving force here. He's the one pulling the strings from behind the curtain. But you can't understand the god without understanding the prophet.
So we have to go back to the beginning.
We have to go back to 1891.
Okay, let's set the scene. Lynn, Massachusetts. It's the tail end of the Victorian era. You got the gas lamps, the industrial smog, that very specific kind of gothic gloom everywhere. And in the middle of all this is Absalom Spears. He's 10 years old, and he is in a situation that, frankly, no child should ever be in. His mother is dying.
And this tragedy, it defines his entire existence. Most kids, when they're faced with the impending death of a parent, they feel utterly helpless, They might pray, they might cry, they might beg the doctor to do something more.
But Absalom,
he's wired differently.
he's hearing voices.
He is. Even at that young age, he's a medium, though he doesn't really have the vocabulary for it yet. He hears what the book calls the whispers of the dead.
Wow.
And one specific voice cuts through all that noise. It tells him there is a solution. But the solution isn't medical, it's mechanical.
And this is where the story just takes a sharp left turn into some pretty serious body horror.
It really does.
The source material describes an experiment Absalom performs. He's trying to test a theory that's been put into his head. He captures a sparrow, a dead sparrow, right?
Yes, he finds a dead bird. And in the logic of a 10-year-old genius who is, completely losing his mind with grief, he decides that death is just. It's a mechanical failure.
So the bird isn't dead in some spiritual sense.
Not to him, it's just broken. The parts have stopped moving. So he comes up with a plan. He decides to replace them.
He makes his father's pocket watch, which is such a symbolic object.
Oh, incredibly. He takes it apart. And under the dim light of a lantern, this little kid performs surgery on a bird. He scoops out the heart, the lungs, all the organic mess as he sees it.
And he installs gears, springs, a balance wheel from the watch.
And it's the precision of it that's so chilling in the description. This isn't some frenzied, messy act. It's a calculated engineering project. He truly believes that if he can just make the mechanics perfect, the life will return.
He thinks he can wind the bird up and it'll fly.
Yes, and if he can make the bird fly.
Then he can do the same for his mother. He can literally cut out the sickness and replace it with perfect, predictable clockwork.
Exactly. It's the birth of his entire obsession. He's trying to impose order-mechanical, predictable order onto the absolute chaos of biology and death.
And of course, it fails.
Of course.
The bird doesn't fly. He just lies there on his workbench full of useless gears.
Mhm.
And that same night, his mother passes away.
And that double failure, it breaks him.
Yeah.
But it also hardens him into something new, because the voice that guided him, the voice he trusted, it tells him something absolutely crucial in that moment.
It doesn't say he was wrong.
No, it says it is not yet time.
Which is so manipulative. It's not you're crazy or this is physically impossible. It's just not yet. It keeps the hope alive while validating the entire delusion.
Precisely. So Absalom grows up with this core belief that his methodology was sound, that the timing was simply wrong.
And he spends the next decade of his life chasing that voice.
He does. He leans into his abilities. He becomes a full-blown medium. He eventually moves to Baltimore. By 1898, he's deeply entrenched in the whole spiritualist movement.
Which was huge at the time, right? Seances, table turning, ectoplasm.
It was the craze of the age. But Absalom isn't just a parlor trickster trying to scam grieving widows. He's looking for the real deal. He's looking for a genuine connection.
And he finds it
Hmm?
at a seance with a man named Peter Donaldson.
This is the moment of first contact. The voice that's been guiding him his whole life finally gives him a name, Kemuel.
And Kemuel manifests through Donaldson.
But this is not a friendly chat from beyond the grave. The sheer energy required to bring this entity through is, well, it's consumptive.
The description of what happens to Peter Donaldson is just, it's gnarly. He doesn't just faint or get a headache. The life force is literally sucked out of him so violently that he physically disintegrates.
He crumbles into a pile of bone dust right there at the seance table.
Can you imagine witnessing that?
It would terrify most people into never touching a Ouija board again for the rest of their lives. But Absalom, he sees it as progress, as a successful test.
And in that pile of dust, Kemuel leaves what he calls a precious gift.
A glass cylinder.
A battery.
It's the prototype. And now Kemuel speaks to Absalom directly, no longer needing a medium, and it lays out the grand plan. It claims to be a harbinger of a new age.
And it reveals that it's one of 3 destroyers, or archons, and its purpose is to erase the creator's mistakes.
Meaning us.
Meaning everything, humanity, nature, the whole chaotic mess of existence. Kemuel wants to wipe the slate completely clean.
But it can't do it from the other side. It needs a physical vessel to enter our world, a body that won't just crumble to dust like poor Peter Donaldson did.
So that glass cylinder is the key. It's a storage device for the energy needed to bridge that gap. Absalom just needs to figure out how to scale it up.
And to do that, he needs a team.
Enter the Band of Electricizers.
It sounds like a quirky indie folk band, doesn't it?
It really does. But it's actually a full-blown doomsday cult. So who are these people that he gathers?
They're a collection of lost souls, really. All of them are quite wealthy, all disillusioned with the world in some way, and all completely captivated by Absalom's charisma and his vision.
You have Jeffrey Wickham, an elderly man.
Right. Annabelle Standish and Tyler Arden, who are these young, passionate lovers, a man named Silas Udell, and most tragically, Absalom's own wife, Sally Spears.
And he moved them all back to Lynn, Massachusetts in 1901. They buy a farmhouse, the same property, I assume.
The very same. And they start building, they pool their vast fortunes and start constructing these enormous machines in the barn. Massive copper wound dynamos based entirely on the blueprints that Kemuel is feeding directly into Absalom's mind.
It must have been a fever dream of industry. They're working day and night. The goal is to open a stable doorway, a permanent one, for Kemuel to come through.
But as they get closer to the activation date, Absalom realizes the math doesn't work. The machines are perfect, but the power source is insufficient. The ambient spiritual energy isn't enough.
They need a jumpstart, a massive surge of power. And this is where we see just how far gone Absalom really is.
He realizes a sacrifice is needed, and not a bird this time.
No, he needs a human soul. And not just any soul. He needs a soul that trusts him implicitly, one that is willingly connected to the circuit.
So during the final ritual to charge the machines, the power draw spikes. The text describes this raw energy arcing through the room uncontrolled, and Sally Spears, his wife, is positioned to be the conduit.
She burns from the inside out. The description is horrific. She is screaming, dying, and Absalom doesn't stop it. He just watches. He lets it happen.
And he reframes it instantly, in his own mind and for the others. She isn't a victim, she's a martyr. She is the holy fuel that will light the way for their new god. It's the ultimate act of rationalization.
And he convinces the rest of the group that this was beautiful, that this was a necessary and glorious step.
He does. But the town of Lynn? They disagree.
Strongly.
Rumors had been spreading for months about the weird lights and the strange humming noises coming from the farm at all hours. When Sally dies, or rather, when that explosion of energy happens, the town finally reacts.
A mob forms, led by a man named Walter Massey.
And a local pastor, right?
Yes, the two of them. They view this as witchcraft, as pure Satanism. They storm the property with torches and pitchforks.
And they burn the barn to the ground, with the machines and the rest of the cultists still inside.
And that really should have been the end of it. 1901, ashes to ashes, bone to dust. Just a grim little footnote in local Massachusetts history.
But as we've established, Absalom Spears is an engineer of the afterlife. Death was never the end for him. It was just a phase change, a temporary setback.
So let's jump forward. Nearly a century. The year's 1995. And we are right back at the old Spears property in Lynn. But it's not a cult compound anymore. It's a fixer-upper.
It's the classic American dream, which is also, of course, the classic horror setup. You have the Thomas family, Stan, the dad, Bethany, the mom, two kids, Jack and Rebecca.
And crucially, their dog, Sadie.
And they're renovating this old farmhouse, trying to build a life for themselves.
I always struggle with this part of the story. Because the Thomas family, they are completely innocent. They didn't read some forbidden book. They didn't play with the Ouija board. They bought a house.
And that's what makes the violation so deeply disturbing. It's completely random. The kids are out playing in the yard one day, and they find these strange copper cylinders sticking out of the dirt.
They've been buried there since the fire in 1901.
To the kids, they look like funny plants. They have no idea what they are. But the dog knows better. Sadie, who's a golden retriever mix, she immediately goes into guard mode. She starts barking, growling.
And she attacks one of the cylinders.
And the moment her teeth hit that copper, the circuit closes. The stored energy from 1901, from Sally's sacrifice, it all releases at once.
But it's not just electricity.
No, it's so much more than that. It's personality. It's soul data that's been stored on a hard drive for 94 years.
Can you describe the chain reaction? Because it's so cinematic in the absolute worst way.
The dog gets electrocuted first. There's a flash of brilliant blue light. But the arc doesn't ground out in the earth. It jumps. It hits Stan, the father. Then it arcs from him to Bethany, then to the kids. In less than a second, the entire family is struck down by this blue lightning.
And when they wake up, they aren't the Thomases anymore.
Not even close. The spirits of the Band of Electricizers were tracked in those batteries, preserved, and now they've been downloaded into new hardware.
It's the most profound form of identity theft imaginable. So Stan's consciousness is just gone, erased.
Suppressed or maybe completely overwritten. Stan is now Absalom Spears.
And Bethany, the mom, she becomes Jeffrey Wickham.
Right, and you have to remember, Jeffrey Wickham was an old man in 1901.
So you have an elderly Victorian man suddenly inhabiting the body of a young mother in the 1990s. The dysmorphia must be intense.
It is. The characters comment on it. The confusion of gender, of age, of new physical capabilities and limitations, it's incredibly disorienting for them.
And the children become Annabelle and Tyler, the young levels from the original cult, which just adds a whole other layer of wrongness to this new family dynamic.
Oh, it's deeply unsettling.
And the dog.
The dog. Sadie becomes Silas Udell.
So Silas, a human cultist, wakes up after nearly 100 years of being trapped in a battery, and he is a dog.
It's grotesque, but Absalom is nothing if not pragmatic. He doesn't panic. He looks at his new hands, Stan's hands, and he just says, we have work to do.
And he essentially hijacks Stan's brain. Right. He accesses all of Stan's modern knowledge.
Instantly. He learns about phones, trucks, computers, the internet, all in a flash. He adapts.
He realizes they failed in 1901 because they lacked resources and technology. But now he has the modern world at his fingertips. He has a second chance to bring Kemuel through.
But the core requirements haven't changed. They still need a proper vessel. And they still need a massive amount of power.
Okay, let's talk about the resources they need, because this is where the BPRD finally gets involved. Absalom needs raw materials.
He needs corpses, fresh ones, old ones. He is not picky at all. He needs biological matter to build the foot soldiers for his new army.
So where does he get them?
He goes to the local mortician, a man named Franklin Massey.
Massey. Wait, that's the same last name as the man who led the mob and burned the barn down?
The very same.
Yeah.
Franklin is Walter Massey's son. He's an old man now himself, suffering from terrible, debilitating arthritis. He's lived his whole life in the shadow of his father's supposed heroism, but he's a bitter, lonely guy.
And Absalom, wearing Stan's face, walks into the funeral home and makes him an offer.
He heals him. He just touches Franklin's gnarled hands, and the pain is gone. The joints straighten out.
It's the carrot and the stick.
Absolutely. I can make you young again. I can take away all the pain. But I need the dead, Franklin. I need your inventory.
It's pure manipulation. And Franklin, desperate and amazed, agrees. He becomes their secret supplier. So they have the bodies, but they also need the energy to power them. And this brings us to the faith energy theory. This is the part of the deep dive where I really want to just stop and think about the implications of this.
It's the most fascinating and I think the most original concept in the whole book.
So Absalom theorizes that human emotion, specifically very focused belief or adoration or worship, it literally changes the physical structure of objects it's directed at.
Yes. So if you pray to a statue every single day for 20 years, you're not just talking to yourself in Absalom's physics, you are physically charging the statue with spiritual energy.
So it's like radiation. If you expose a piece of metal to radiation, it becomes radioactive.
That's a perfect analogy. If you expose an object to intense, prolonged faith, it becomes saturated with that energy. It becomes a battery.
And this explains the bizarre pattern of thefts that the BPRD starts tracking. They aren't stealing money or jewels. They're stealing Elvis Presley's last teacup.
Exactly. Why Elvis? Because millions of people poured their love, their obsession, their secular worship into the idea of Elvis, that cup he drank from. In this world, it's glowing with psychic residue.
They steal a section of a wall from a house in New Jersey that has a water stain shaped like the Virgin Mary.
The same principle. Thousands of religious pilgrims visited that wall. They projected their hope, their belief in miracles onto that stain. Absalom comes along and harvests that. He doesn't care about the religion itself. He just cares about the voltage.
It is such a cynical, industrial view of spirituality. He's strip mining human hope.
It's the total commodification of the soul. To him, a prayer isn't a plea to the divine. It's just potential kinetic energy waiting to be tapped and stored.
This leads to the Graken-Spriggan incident, which sounds completely ridiculous, but it actually proves the theory.
It's definitely the comic relief of the story, but it serves a very important narrative purpose. Hellboy gets called out to the home of a writer, a man named Donald Kramer.
And Kramer's problem is that a boulder in his backyard, just a big rock, was stolen.
To Kramer, it's just a rock, an inconvenient bit of landscaping. But to the local fairy folk,
The Graken-Spriggan.
to them, that rock was their mother. It was their most sacred object, the center of their entire world. When Absalom stole it, he kicked a fairy hornet's nest.
So Hellboy shows up, expecting a simple theft case, and suddenly he is fighting an army of 6-inch tall fairies.
And I just love the description of their gear. They're urban fairies. They've adapted.
Right. They have armor made from cut-up soda cans. They're using scissors and disposable razors as swords and spears.
And they are riding crows and rabbits into battle against Hellboy.
It's completely absurd. Hellboy is trying to just swat them away, trying not to hurt them too badly, while these tiny creatures are screaming for his blood.
But the takeaway is deadly serious. Absalom is targeting anything that is worshipped. It doesn't matter if the object of faith is Christian, pop culture, or fairy folk. If it has faith energy, he takes it.
He's building a stockpile. He's charging thousands and thousands of those glass cylinders, and he's using that power to animate his army.
The zombie cyborgs.
Or clockwork zombies.
Whatever you call them, they are an absolute nightmare.
Let's look at the anatomy of these things, because they are not your typical Night of the Living Dead shufflers. These are something else entirely.
No, these are engineered monstrosities. Absalom, using Franklin's steady supply of corpses, hollows out their chest cavities. He installs one of those spirit batteries right in the gut, and it glows with that eerie blue faith energy.
And then he reinforces the skeleton with wood and iron.
It's this grotesque fusion of rot and industry. You have decaying human flesh literally bolted onto metal struts and wooden braces.
The sound they make. The source describes it as a wet, clanking noise. The sound of grinding gears being muffled by meat.
Ugh, that is a vivid image. And they run on what the BPRD later calls spook power.
Literally. The batteries are trapping ghosts. So these zombies are powered by the tormented souls of the recently dead, forced to turn the gears that move their desecrated limbs.
It's slavery of the soul, pure and simple.
And the BPRD finally encounters these things in force at a museum up in Maine, a Native American museum.
Absalom's target this time is Glooskap's medicine bag, another artifact of immense spiritual power and belief. Hellboy and Liz Sherman are there on a stakeout, waiting for them.
And when the fight breaks out, we finally see how dangerous these clockwork zombies really are. Hellboy punches one square in the chest, and instead of blood, it just vomits a spray of black oil and springs all over him.
They're incredibly durable. They don't feel pain. They don't stop until you physically shatter that spirit battery in their gut. One of them rips a full-size totem pole out of the museum floor and starts swinging it like a baseball bat.
And then Absalom unveils his air support.
The mechanical sparrows.
It's the callback to his childhood. The little boy who tried and failed to fix one dead bird has now mass-produced thousands of them.
And these have razor-sharp metal wings, clockwork hearts, and they swarm Liz and Hellboy like a cloud of metallic locusts.
It's a moment where you really understand the scale of the threat. Absalom isn't just some guy in a basement with a weird hobby anymore. He has a functioning supernatural army.
Liz Sherman has to basically go nuclear. She uses her pyrokinesis to just fill the entire room with a wave of fire to melt the birds and incinerate the zombies.
But in all that chaos, one of the creatures gets away with the medicine bag.
And they escape in a minivan.
Which is such a funny, grounding detail. You have this ancient, resurrected evil, these clockwork abominations, and they just pile into a Dodge Caravan to make their getaway down the highway.
It really emphasizes that they are operating in our world. They aren't in some gothic castle on a mountaintop. They're on the interstate, obeying traffic laws.
So back at the BPRD labs, Hellboy is examining the wreckage of one of the zombies they managed to recover. He cracks open the battery housing. And this becomes a pivotal moment for the entire investigation.
Because when he breaks the battery, the spook power is finally released. The spirits that were trapped inside are freed, and they manifest in the lab.
And we get two very, very important ghosts.
One is Sally Spears, Absalom's wife. We'll get to her in a second. But the other one connects directly to the BPRD director himself, Tom Manning.
Uncle Steve.
Uncle Steve.
So tell us about Uncle Steve, because this was seeded earlier in the story.
It was. Earlier, Tom Manning, who is usually this very stiff, by-the-book, bureaucratic guy, he had a weird episode. He started writing cryptic notes in his sleep.
Don't take any wooden nickels.
Which was his uncle's catchphrase. Steve was Manning's crazy uncle who died in an institution years ago. But it turns out Steve wasn't crazy at all.
As a child, in 1901, he lived in Lynn, Massachusetts. He saw the barn fire. He knew about the Electricizers.
So when the Thomas family got possessed back in '95, Steve's ghost, which was still lingering, felt it. He sensed the return of that old evil.
And he tried to warn his nephew.
Exactly. He tried possessing Manning to write warnings, but eventually he got caught by one of Absalom's spirit nets and got stuffed into a zombie battery like all the others.
But being trapped inside the battery gave him crucial intel. He saw where they were taking all the stolen artifacts.
He becomes their supernatural informant. He's the one who tells the BPRD that the cult is heading to a place called the Gosnold Islands. But Steve is just the map. Sally Spears. She's the history.
Sally's ghost is a mess, though. She appears as this charred, constantly burning figure. She's reliving her death over and over. She can't speak.
So Liz Sherman does something incredibly brave and also incredibly dangerous. She invites Sally's spirit in. She lets the ghost possess her so it can use Liz's voice to communicate.
And Liz is a pyrokinetic. She has this very complex and traumatic relationship with fire, and now she has to volunteer to feel the memory of being burned alive.
The scene is just heart-wrenching. Through Liz's body, Sally finally screams. She reveals the truth that Absalom has been hiding from his followers for a century. She wasn't a willing martyr. She was a sacrifice. She felt betrayed. She felt the pain.
And she reveals the true nature of Kemuel.
Yes. Absalom still thinks Kemuel is a savior who will build a new paradise. Sally knows the truth. Kemuel is a destroyer. He doesn't want to fix the house. He wants to burn it to the ground with everyone inside.
Sally also gives them the final missing piece of the 1901 puzzle. Everyone thought the entire cult died in that barn fire. But one person got away.
Mary Hudnall.
In 1901, Mary was designated as the Madonna of the cult. She was the one chosen to physically carry the seed of the god.
She was meant to be the vessel. She was pregnant, or at least she believed she was. When the mob attacked the barn, she managed to flee in the chaos. She escaped the fire.
And here's the twist that just makes my skin crawl. In 1995, she is still alive.
She's over 100 years old. She's lying in a bed in a hidden room in a private nursing home, kept alive by the entity that's still inside her.
She is still pregnant.
For 94 years, doctors have diagnosed it as the world's longest hysterical pregnancy, a purely psychological condition. But it's not. The seed of the god has been incubating inside her, keeping her in this state of suspended animation. She's become a living cocoon.
That is it's horrific. Just the biological implications of that, waiting, slowly rotting, but never being allowed to die.
And Absalom, in Stan's body, tracks her down. He enters her room, and the way she reacts is so telling. She calmly dismisses her nurses. She knows him. She sees past Stan's younger face and recognizes the soul of Absalom.
And she just says, "You took your time."
The family is finally reunited. Absalom, the possessed family, and the ancient pregnant Madonna, they have almost everything they need.
Except the final body. Mary's human body is far too frail. It can't possibly contain the full power of an archon like Kemuel. If he tries to be born through her, he'll burn her out in seconds, just like he did to Peter Donaldson all those years ago.
They need a new suit, a permanent containment vessel.
And this brings us to the God Machine.
Uncle Steve gave them the location, the Gosnald Islands, specifically a place on one of the islands called the Depot.
It's an old decommissioned BPRD storage site. But decades ago, after she escaped the fire, Mary Hudnall used her family's considerable wealth to commission a sculptor, a man named Berenger. She had him build a monument on the island in secret.
A monument that is actually a shell, a body.
Inside a massive forgotten boat shed on the island, hidden for nearly a century, is a 50-foot-tall construct made of iron, bronze, and copper. It's a masterpiece of Victorian steampunk engineering.
It's a giant robot. Let's just call it what it is. It's a Victorian mecha.
It's essentially that, yes. It's hollow. It's waiting for a pilot. Or in this case, a soul.
So that's the final plan. Go to the island, hook Mary Hudnall up to this machine, use all the stolen faith energy from the thousands of batteries to act as a conduit.
To rip the spirit of Kemuel out of her womb and inject it directly into the metal giant.
And once Kemuel inhabits that metal body, it will be, for all intents and purposes, indestructible. It will be a 50-foot-tall god walking the earth, powered by the collective belief of humanity.
With the sole purpose of exterminating us?
It really raises the stakes, doesn't it? It's not just take over the world, it's delete the world.
And this brings us back to the theology of the enemy, which the book touches on. The archons Kemuel, Duma, and Zapio.
They see themselves as the janitors of creation.
That's a terrifying mindset because it's completely devoid of malice, in a way. A janitor doesn't hate the dirt he's cleaning up. He just removes it because it's not supposed to be there.
And Kemuel looks at all of human history, our wars, our pollution, our cruelty, and just says, this was a mistake, a blight. I need to bleach this entire experiment.
And Absalom is the foreman. He's the human who agrees. Yes, we are dirt. Please clean us up.
It's the ultimate form of self-loathing projected onto the entire species.
So we're at the end game. The BPRD is mobilizing. They're flying to the Gosnald Islands. Hellboy, Liz Sherman, Abe Sapien, the whole team. They know what they're facing.
And they know they are massively outgunned. They're going up against an army of unkillable cyborgs, a powerful medium who can hijack technology, and potentially a literal god in a giant metal body.
Now, we aren't going to spoil the actual blow-by-blow of the final battle. You absolutely have to read the book for that. The explosions, the tragedy, the final confrontation between Hellboy and the giant, it is pure cinematic gold.
It really is. But the setup, the core ideas, that's what lingers long after you finish. The image of that machine just waiting in the dark for all those years.
I want to circle back to the central theme before we wrap up, this idea of faith energy.
It's the most haunting note of the whole story, I think.
Absalom creates a weapon of mass destruction, but he fuels it with love. He fuels it with the adoration of Elvis fans, the prayers of the faithful at a water stain, the sacredness of a fairy stone.
It's such a perverse inversion. He takes the very best things about us, our capacity to believe, to hope, to love something bigger than ourselves, and he weaponizes it against us.
He turns our collective hope into a battery for our own destruction.
And that raises a really interesting question. Is the energy itself neutral? Is faith just power, like electricity, that can be used for good or evil? Or does the intent of the believer actually matter? Absalom clearly thinks it's just juice.
But maybe the tragedy is that he couldn't feel the difference. He saw the power, but not the love that created it.
And that is the provocative thought for today. If belief is a tangible energy source, powerful enough to fuel a god, what happens when that energy is twisted? Is Absalom Spears a villain? Or is he just the most devoted believer in history, completely and utterly blind to the fact that his god hates him and everything he is?
That is the tragedy of fanaticism, isn't it? The absolute certainty that you are saving the world, even as you strike the match to burn it all down.
Heavy stuff.
Very heavy stuff. But that's why we do this. A huge thanks to Thomas E. Sniegoski for The God Machine. It is a wild, terrifying, and surprisingly deep ride into the Hellboy universe.
Absolutely. A fantastic addition to the mythos.
And thanks to you for listening. Keep your eyes open. You never know what or who might be powered by the things you believe in.
Stay curious.
We'll see you in the next deep dive.